Hello, friends. I wanted to jump on here real quick for a quick video to tell you. I know a lot of people have asked me how my husband finally got into his year-long discipleship program where he found his freedom from alcohol forever. I was in church today and ran into a woman in the restroom, and I told her a little bit of my story. It kind of came back to me, so I thought I've never shared this with the ladies on my page, so I want to go ahead and do that right now. It's really a God story. And she reminded me of it because her son is in prison. She was asking me to pray for her son because he was in prison because he was accused of domestic violence and it wasn't true. And then I said to her, well, that's kind of what happened with my husband. But in Tennessee, they don't mess around. If you say domestic violence, they take it right out of your hands and you can't take it back. And so even though I didn't specifically say it, I left that woman thinking I falsely accused my husband. So I kind of began rehashing the story in my head, and I thought I'm going to share that out here today. My husband, Regis, he's now been free from alcohol for 7 years. He battled alcohol for 38 years. Not really battled it. He didn't battle it until probably 2010 when he realized he had a problem, and he became free in 2017 for good. But anyway, so as it was, I finally learned how to set boundaries. We were in the fifth state we had lived in, and he immediately fell after getting a new job in Tennessee. And what happened was I had set my boundary, and I finally kept it. And he was in a hotel. He could not stay in the house if he was drinking, so I took him to a hotel. And he proceeded to tell me he was going to talk to the people at LifeChangers Outreach in Pigeon Forge or Sevierville, and he was going to go. And so he went to this hotel, and I said, fine, when you do, let me know, I'll take you. Well, he proceeded just to go there and do what he had done the previous 4 or so times when I've dropped him off at hotels. He just drank himself into oblivion. And then one day he called me to come get him. And I went to get him, and I was going to take him to the hospital because he wasn't feeling well. And he told me he was going to go to, he was going to move to Kansas. He was going to go, we had a rental house back in Kansas. We now lived in Tennessee. And he was going to get on the highway, as drunk as he was. And he was going to go and just go ahead and move into the rental because it was presently not occupied. And so he thought he would just do that. And I said to him, and for whatever reason, he had a pocket knife in his hand. And I said to him, if you do that, you are going to kill someone else or you're going to kill yourself. And he held up the knife and he goes, well, I can do that right now. And he had this evil look in his eyes. Like, I knew he would never hurt me. He's never laid a hand on me. But my oldest son, my youngest was at school. My oldest son was in his room playing video games. He was in college at the time and didn't have a class. He was getting ready to go to work at McDonald's later that day. And I said, very sarcastically, because I knew he didn't mean anything by it, I said, Regis, that's my son's name too. They were both Regises. I said, Dad's holding a knife up in my face. And my son came running in the room. And his dad, I'll give him credit. His dad looked different than he had. Like, he definitely had a demon who he had invited in because, as the Bible says, when you clean the house out and then you go back to the old sins, the demon comes back when he finds a place swept clean, and he will invite 7 times more demons. Well, Regis had done that. So he was just, he had allowed the demons to come in. And anyway, so my son was afraid, and he said, Mom, we got to get you out of here. We got to get you out of here. And I wasn't going to go. And he said, we got to call the police. And so I had never, ever called the police on my husband. But I went ahead and we jumped in the car and we went down through our subdivision and hid around the corner, and we called the police. Well, pretty soon the police came to me, and my son, he said he had a pocket knife out, and I admitted that he had a pocket knife out, and they asked what the words were, and I'm telling you, for the life of me, this happened twice when Regis got into trouble with the police. I could not remember the words or the situation, like that story I just told you about. The sun's getting in the way here. I could not remember our conversation when he held up that knife. And they said, well, since he had a knife, we're going to have to press domestic violence charges. And the state in Tennessee presses it. You don't get a say. So it was out of my hands at that point. I couldn't take it back. I couldn't say, sorry, I called you. I couldn't do any of that, because once um, there is domestic violence, and his was aggravated because he had a weapon, um, they take it out of your hands and you can't renege on it. So pretty soon my husband come walking down the hill to where we were at, and they went to him and they couldn't find a knife on him. But they took him in the police car, and he was like, honey, I didn't do anything. And it broke my heart, but I had to let him take him in the police car. And then we went back to the house, and the police found the knife. So um, he went to jail with false allegations of aggravated domestic assault, and I couldn't revoke those. And when he was there, as God would have it, he is just the coolest God, because I know he took it out of our hands. He had just allowed Regis so many chances, and he wouldn't get it right. And Regis had told me before he said he was leaving to move to Kansas, he said, I can't go to jail. When I told him he had to go to that year-long program, he was referring to it as jail. How ironic that that very day he ended up in real jail. And because there was a restraining order, I could not talk to him. He had no friends here. He lost his job prior to that, um, because he had wrecked a company vehicle. And so he couldn't call anybody but my son to try to get him out of jail. And my son was like, Dad, I can't do it again. You can't come out, because he knew something just wasn't right this time. And so and I wasn't in fear for my life, not one bit. I know my husband would never lay a hand on me, but I just let the consequences go. And as God would have it, I had a pastor at the church I was going to at the time. He was a chaplain in the police academy, or the police force, or whatever it is. He did the chaplain work. And so I reached out to him and I asked him what I could do, how I could talk to the DA. And he got me in touch. And then my friend, a friend I had met 6 months prior, her son went to school with my son. She worked in the courthouse. She worked in criminal court, and she talked to the DA for me. I sent an email to everybody who could possibly have his case in that courtroom. I sent the same email. My husband is not a violent man. I just want him to go to this year-long program. He won't hurt me. I don't want the restraining order, but I do need to talk to him. They wouldn't lift the restraining order. That was just the way it was. But because my friend worked there, and the DA who was assigned the case went to her and said, is she telling the truth? Like, or is she one of those women who just say that and then they proceed to get beaten? Because I don't want to, he didn't want to get in on that. And she assured them that my husband wasn't like that. So what happened was, I wouldn't get him out of jail. He had to stay in jail 11 days in a cell. That was, I mean, had I known what he was in, I probably would have rescued him. It's a good thing I didn't know. Jail is a horrible place here in Hamilton County, Tennessee. There's one bathroom in the center of the floor. He watched a man get beaten almost to death in front of him in the cell. I mean, it was terrible, and I didn't know any of that while he was in there. I hope you can see me, because it keeps like going all out. Anyway, I'm just going to wrap this up real quick. But as it was, I talked to the DA, and the DA asked me, he said, ma'am, a lot of women think that their husbands aren't going to be violent, but they do. And he like treated me like I was a victim of assault, like just the person who lies for their husband. And I couldn't, I couldn't convince him otherwise, but he was willing to work with my husband's assigned lawyer, because I would not pay for one. And they talked about him going to LifeChangers Outreach, having his sentence be that. He'd never had any kind of trouble with the law before, except for getting pulled over for wrecks that he had and that sort of thing, but never really ended up with a full-blown DUI before. So he didn't have any kind of record, so he probably could have got out of it, but he wanted to work with them so he could talk to me, and they promised him he would be able to, and that the restraining order would be lifted. But as it was, they did not lift it, and he had to go there. And anyway, they sentenced him there. They sent him to LifeChangers, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him, because it was there that he's always had Jesus Christ as his Savior. He learned how to have Jesus Christ as his Lord, and it was that place, LifeChangers, that changed his life, honestly, saved his life, and showed him the real way to Jesus. And he had a rough time being there, but because he had no privileges, and he couldn't talk to me for the longest time. But we finally got the restraining order lifted, like after the first month, and I got to see him on Thanksgiving. And it was right now. It was this time of year. This is when he first went in, October. It was like October 11th, maybe around there, 13th, something like that, when he went in. So yeah, um, it was a situation that only God could have coordinated, because it seems like I tricked him, but I didn't do it on purpose. God just like erased my memory, because he had him where he wanted him. He knew what would happen in that program, and my husband would not willingly make the choice to go. So God took it out of his hands and out of mine. So thanks for listening. Have a blessed day. There's always hope. I just want you all to know there is always hope, no matter what. No matter what it looks like. My husband's situation looked hopeless. I had no idea what we were going to do, but God. Love y'all. God bless.